Hi everyone, my name is Emilie Wilder and I am one of the biologists for our field conservation department here at Zoo New England. I work with a lot of different animals, but one of my favorite animals is turtles. And you might not know this, it's kind of a special and almost like our little secret, is that here at the zoo, we don't just work with animals at the zoo. We work with animals all around actually all around the world. We have international conservation projects in a whole bunch of countries, but we have a really, really cool local conservation program where we protect local rare and endangered animals. And one of our conservation partnerships that we have going on is the fight to combat illegal wildlife trafficking. And I happen to have a really cool animal here today that is a perfect ambassador animal to tell that story of both illegal wildlife trafficking and our local turtle conservation project. So this here is Flynn. And Flynn is a Blandings turtle. And you can tell he's a Blandings turtle by looking at that kind of yellowish chin that he's got. He's kind of tucking in it a little bit for us here. He's a little shy with the camera. But Flynn is a Blandings turtle. And he is one of our 10 native species of turtles here in Massachusetts. So there are 10 different kinds of turtles that live in Massachusetts. And of those 10, 6 are rare or endangered. And Blandings turtles are one of those threatened turtles here in Massachusetts. And Zoo New England has a special conservation program where we work with several different populations around the state. And we are monitoring the turtles, looking at the population. We go around and we protect their nests, we protect their hatchlings, and we do something that we call giving them a head start. And so that is one way that we are helping to bring back Blandings turtles. Because Blandings turtles are really, just like turtles all around the world, they're kind of having a hard time these days. Turtles, there are over 300 different species of turtles around the world, and more than half of them are rare or endangered. And there are all kinds of problems for why turtles are suffering around the world and here in Massachusetts. There's things like habitat loss, pollution, habitat fragmentation. But one of the things that is an issue for turtles is illegal wildlife trafficking. And Zoo New England is part of a consortium of a whole bunch of different zoos and organizations that are part of the Wildlife Trafficking Alliance. And so we are trying to fight against the illegal trade of wildlife, which can be all different kinds of, whether it's tigers or lemurs, all the way to turtles. And turtles are one of those big ones that are being trafficked. They're kind of small, they're somewhat easy to transport, and so they end up in the wildlife trade quite a bit. And Flynn here actually was a potential trafficking victim. Flynn was found as a tiny hatchling along with his or her nest mates, or eggs rather, in a shipping container. And the person who was unloading the shipping container found these eggs. Most of them had been smashed, and most of the hatchlings that were in those eggs were dead. But Flynn miraculously had survived and was still alive, but not in good shape. So Flynn was quickly brought to our zoo hospital and taken care of and nursed back to health. And when Flynn was first born, Flynn was the size of a quarter. Now look at how big Flynn is. Flynn actually weighs over 450 grams. And Flynn is now 2.5 years old, so he's a good sized turtle. And it's a good success story that Flynn was able to be rescued, but it's also an important reminder of the dangers, right? Most animals that get trafficked don't survive that experience. And, Flynn was one of the lucky ones that survived. But because we don't know where Flynn came from, who was trafficking him, right? We don't know any of the details. Because of that, Flynn couldn't ever be released again. And that often also happens. So it's, again, a really important reminder about that. Now, how does that relate to you, right? You might think, well, I'm not a wildlife trafficker. Like, what can I do to deal with that? And that's great. I'm super glad that you are not a wildlife trafficker and that you are not engaged in this activity, because that would be really bad. But it does relate to so many of us. Sometimes inadvertently we can get involved or actually support wildlife trafficking without even realizing it, right? Things like clicking on or following YouTube channels of people who might be engaged, right? If you see people that have really cool exotic pets on their YouTube channel, right, you might want to know, where did they get those pets? Do they have those pets with a permit, right? Where did those pets come from the wild, or were they bred in a responsible way? A lot of times, right, there might be a kind of not a great backstory to those. So sometimes even us, where we think we're not involved, we can actually be supporting that kind of problem. Another way that sometimes we kind of inadvertently get involved is by wanting to have some of these animals as pets, right? You see Flynn, he is so cute, and a lot of people love turtles. Turtles, I can relate. Turtles are my absolute favorite kind of animal, and a lot of people want a turtle as a pet. And there are reputable breeders for turtles, so it's not to say that like every turtle that you would ever find is trafficked, but a lot of them can be or have come from animals that were taken originally from the wild. And the other problem that happens with having a turtle as a pet is that turtles can live a very long time. So we don't really recommend turtles as pets, even if you can get them from a reputable. This is a pet that might outlive you. And so that makes it a really difficult decision to have. And we hear all the time here at the zoo from people who contact us and say, hey, we have this turtle and we don't know what to do with it. Like, can you take it? And we can't obviously just take everyone's turtles for them that they no longer want anymore. And so that ends up being a problem. You get turtles that don't have homes, and then you get issues where then people, they can't rehome their turtle, and they end up trying to release their turtle into the wild. And Massachusetts already has a problem with non-native red-eared sliders that have been originally released as pets, and now they're taking over certain wetland environments. So that right there can be a problem in and of itself, where you get an invasive species that's taking over habitat from our native turtles. But you can also have issues where those turtles might be carrying diseases, right, that can affect our native turtles. So that's also not good. So few really important takeaways, right? We can all make a difference for the illegal wildlife trade, right, by not supporting people who are involved in wildlife trade, not supporting businesses or YouTubers or anyone like that. We can make a difference by talking to our state legislators and having them, strengthen the laws that protect animals against wildlife trade, and by enjoying our wildlife in the wild, right? We want to be able to have all these wonderful creatures for generations to come, free and wild. And if we are taking animals out of the wild, we won't be able to do that for so many of them. So those are some of the big takeaways. So does anyone here have any questions about Flynn, about wildlife trafficking, turtles in general? Any questions? I am here to answer them for you.
One question that I have is it dangerous for people to take animals from the wild themselves? Are there any dangers that people could encounter by having animals that came from the wild?
Yeah, I mean, of course, that totally depends on the kind of animal, right? If you were to just grab a rattlesnake that you found, right, that's going to be a very different story than if you grab a turtle. So it really depends on the species. But even for, your own, we often hear from people, and again, as a turtle biologist, right, I'm often sometimes I'll be in certain areas and people are like, oh, the turtle lady, or we hear from people, they kind of know us as knowing about turtles, so we end up hearing a lot of turtle stories specifically. So that's what I'll cover right now. And often, a lot of times, we see well-meaning people trying to help animals in ways that actually are not helping the animal themselves, and that could also be, potentially harming them too. But often we're focused on the animal situation. So I got a call a couple years ago from a woman who had found a turtle, and she saw it out and about in a neighborhood, and she was like, what is this turtle doing in this neighborhood? This doesn't make any sense. It needs to be in a wetland. I know about turtles, and turtles need to be in wetlands. So she picked up the turtle, put it in her car, and drove it about 5 miles down the road to a park that she knew about that had some nice wetlands because it looked like really good turtle habitat. But of course, that turtle is now in a completely new environment, right? 5 miles is quite a long distance for a turtle, and that's not where that turtle was from. Turned out that this was one of the turtles that we had been tracking. It was a Blandings turtle that we had been monitoring for many years, so we knew where her original home was, where she always spent her time. And the reason she had come out into that neighborhood was to find a spot to lay her eggs. And that's why she was out of the water, right, to lay her eggs. And now this woman had driven the turtle to a whole new wetland that the turtle isn't familiar with. She can't lay her eggs in that wetland. What's she going to do? Often what the turtle will try and do is find its way back home, but 5 miles is a long way to walk and there's a lot of roads in there. So thankfully we were able to come in and get that turtle and bring her back to her home, but not every turtle is so lucky from getting the right person. So it is again, sometimes we think we're helping, but you always want to kind of really do your research before you interfere with the life of an animal, because sometimes there's a lot of things going on that you might not be aware of, and you can do more harm than good by interfering. Yeah.
So other questions? So.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank all of you all, and I want to, give you another chance to see Flynn. Right. This is again, Flynn is one of our ambassador animals, and he is, helping to spread the word about the dangers of wildlife trafficking and what we can do to make it better. And what's really exciting is, right, we're not just working with Flynn right here. We're working with all of Flynn's, compatriots out in the wild and helping to bring them back. And a really cool success story that we've been noticing we've now been working with Blandings turtles for 15 years, and we have been protecting nests and improving habitat. And in the main population that we've been working with for those 15 years, the population is actually coming back up, right? We had been seeing really steep declines. It had dropped by more than half since the 1970s, and that population is now coming back because of what we're doing. So that is the last final message that I want to leave you with, is that we can make a difference. We often hear of all these negative stories of doom and gloom with wildlife, and a lot of animals are indeed suffering and going extinct. But if we intervene, if we figure out what is happening with the animal and what can we do to help it, we can actually bring a lot of these species back with the right intervention. So I want to encourage you to look around you, to learn what's going on with wildlife in your community, in your neighborhood, and see what you can do to make a difference, because together we can help bring wildlife back. So thank you so much.